How do we give to God? Or, what is an offering to God? Please walk with me. 1. Genesis 8:20. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Genesis 8:21. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing odor, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of humankind, for the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth. Nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. 2. Ephesians 5:2-1. Therefore be imitators of God, as beloved children. Ephesians 5:2. And live in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. 3. Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and will be repaid in full. 4. Philippians 4:15. You Philippians indeed know that in the early days of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, except you alone. Philippians 4:16. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me help for my needs more than once. Philippians 4:17. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the profit that accumulates to your account. Philippians 4:18. I have been paid in full and have more than enough. I am fully satisfied, now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent, a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God. Philippians 4:19. And my God will fully satisfy every need of yours according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. 3 is included, just to emphasize that giving to the poor is giving to God, even though it does not mention sacrifice or sweet smell ... But looking at 1, 2 and 4, all of which are said to be sweet smelling. In the Old Testament, animal sacrifice was a means by which men had fellowship with God. See Addendum 1. Christ brought an end to all that, and in the New Testament, we relate with God on the basis of his once for all sacrifice. Please note the word basis. We don't relate with God on the basis of what we give to him, but on the basis of what God has given to us. If you don't know what God has done, and you come to God because of what you are bringing, you have missed the New Testament and are wasting your time. But to say, Christ is the only sacrifice, and that's all. Christ is my offering. Christ is my first fruit. Christ is our tithe. God is the one who gives. We don't give to God. We give, but it is not for God. It is just to support the pastor and those in need. It is for men, not for God. It is a lie. We don't relate with God on the basis of what we give to him, but on the basis of what God has given to us. Likewise, we don't say we don't have anything to give to God because God has given us everything. No, because of what God has done for us, we owe him everything. His giving his life for us is the reason we are to give our lives to him and live for him. We love him because he first loved us. That he loved us is not all to our fellowship. It is the basis. There is a response to that. Because he so loved us, we love him. We give to God. When we give to others, it is not just giving to men, it is giving to God. And even though men collect it, God receives it. Just as sure as you are giving to God when you give to the poor and to those in need. When you give to the pastor, you are not just supporting a person. It is not merely a contribution or a financial transaction. You are giving to God. Just as Moses wrote that Noah's animal sacrifice had a pleasant aroma to God, Paul said the Philippians' gifts were sweet smelling to God. You may be able to smell barbecue from far away, but lack the capacity to smell financial support. But God can perceive both very well. Such gifts are first, between you and God, offerings to him, sacrifices, which please him, and he will reward or bless you. Yes, he will. Addendum 1. One example of the New Testament revealed in the Old Testament books is Abraham. In spite of the fact that Abel brought a sacrifice to God, Noah brought a sacrifice to God, and Moses and Aaron brought sacrifices to God, Abraham said, Genesis 22:7, Isaac said to his father Abraham, Father. And he said, Here I am, my son, he said, the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Genesis 22:8. Abraham said, God himself will provide the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So the two of them walked on together. Abraham was speaking about New Testament. He was the first person to go to offer to God without taking an animal. You would think that was because he was going to sacrifice Isaac his son, but that is not what Abraham said. When Isaac asked him why the animal for the sacrifice was not present, Abraham did not sigh deeply and keep quiet. He said, the Lord will provide himself a lamb. The man had caught a revelation. He knew something. He was not talking Old Testament. He was talking New Testament. He was talking about Christ. He was saying to Isaac, the basis of my offering is not what we bring to the altar, but what God brings. He was saying to Isaac, we don't relate with God based on what we bring. We relate with him based on what he has provided, based on what he has done. He was giving the lad a course in redemption. The Lord will provide himself a lamb, and the proof of this is Hebrews 11:17-19. By faith Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac. He who had received the promises was ready to offer up his only son, of whom he had been told, it is through Isaac that descendants shall be named for you. He considered the fact that God is able even to raise someone from the dead, and figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. A faith is offering his only son and him being raised from the dead. Romans 9-7. Just the fact that they are descendants of Abraham doesn't make them truly Abraham's children. For the scriptures say, Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted, though Abraham had other children, too. Romans 9-8. This means that Abraham's physical descendants are not necessarily children of God. It is the children of the promise who are considered to be Abraham's children. Romans 9-9. For God had promised, next year I will return, and Sarah will have a son. Galatians 3:16. God gave the promise to Abraham and his child. And notice that it doesn't say the promise was to his children, as if it meant many descendants. But the promise was to his child, and that, of course, means Christ. Galatians 3:29. And now that you belong to Christ, you are the true children of Abraham, you are his heirs, and now all the promises God gave to him belong to you. In both Romans and Galatians, it says being physically descended from Abraham does not make you a true child of Abraham. In Romans it says, you can only get what God promised Abraham if you came through the child of promise, Isaac. In Galatians, it says you can only get what God promised Abraham if you belong to Jesus Christ. That day, Isaac became a type of Christ. Sir Ebelu Zopaters.